I told you so. I'm a kid in the candy store with the leather on the denim. I ain't the cure, I'm the venom. If you wanna find me, find the taillight. Something's coming in, you're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready.
Okay, we're back. It's Saturday afternoon, but good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which part of the world you are. And today, alam po ninyo, we will depart from the usual controversies besetting our nation, lalo na yung mga nangyayari sa South China Seas, dahil wala naman po tayong nakikitang paroroonan yan. No? Yan po ay mga kaguluhan ng mga different parties and even countries na may interes na pansarili. At wala naman yan sa ating ikalulugdan ng sitwasyon ng ating mga mamamayan. Ang ating pong purpose sa programang ito ay i-project kung ano ang magaling para sa Pilipinas, irrespective of what's happening to the real politics in which our senators, our congressmen, our government officials are trying to get themselves busy with. Ayan mga kabansa. Today's episode is entitled War with Ourselves, and we draw lessons of peace from Indonesia. Ayan mga kabansa. But before that, no, I would like to inform all of you, I would like to remind you that I have published 3 books, A Problem for Every Solution, which deals with the dynamics of our nation in the light of a budding superpower. This was published in 2015 when China was not yet at its peak of its rise. And definitely some initial problems confronting our foreign relations, but with emphasis on people-to-people understanding. Ang pangalawa pong libro ay No Vaccine for a Virus Called Racism. This is a survey of international media and reports of mga scientific journals po. At kinalam natin yan to attempt to trace the origins of COVID-19. All right, and we also wrote a position there pertaining to the politicization of the virus that resulted in a form of racism. The third book is The Poverty of Power. Dito po, through the exemplification of how we use our water and our energy throughout the early Marcos years, and how we were doing the right thing, and as the underlying theme of all my books is A Problem for Every Solution, how the Filipino continues to still engage in some kind of polemics, even sa mga aspeto po na may solusyon na. And how the Cory administration up to the Noynoy Aquino administration presided over the demise of the EDSA revolution and the possible rise of a phoenix in the person of Bongbong Marcos. But we ended with the election of 2022. As to what happened after that, ay hindi na po covered ng libro na yan. I'm writing and finalizing my 4th book. This is about a primer of the South China Sea issues so that once and for all ay matapos na ang mga diskurso dyan. No? Wala po kasing pamantayan ngayon ang mga taong bayan kung ano ang kanilang paghuhugutan ng kanilang mga opinyon, mga kuro-kuro at pananaw ukol sa karagatang nakapalibot sa atin. Kung dito po sa 3 libro na ito ay magkaroon kayo ng interes, ang telepono ko po ay 0917-336-4366. Kung paano kayo makapag-text, padadalan ko kayo ng instructions. By the way, meron po akong siguro mga 5 libro na na-delay ang delivery dahil nawala po ang aking cellphone. Yung pong mga addresses at saka history ng transaksyon ay nandun sa mga text messages. But I would like to inform you na naiayos ko na po ang aking SIM card and we will be shipping all those books within this following week. So there you are. Just text 0917-336-4366. Maraming salamat po. Ang susunod po ay gulitain natin kung ano ang ginawa natin nung nakaraang linggo. Last week, we discussed how the Philippines could take advantage of China's new map, mga kabansa, to gain through diplomacy, no, mga kabansa, to gain through diplomacy a possible geopolitical leverage with our closest neighbor towards a post-pandemic economic recovery. Para po sa akin kasi, ang prioridad ng ating bansa dapat ay regardless sa pananaw ng mga nanutungkulan at pasintabi sa inyong katalinuhan na labis ko namang hinahangaan ay wala sa lugar. At ang aking pong prioridad is nothing but post-pandemic recovery. Wala pa po tayong recovery. No? In fact, we are being murdered by inflation. And our government is near to violating even economic laws, trying to find solutions outside of this economic malaise. For the meantime, China drafted a map that includes the 10-dash line, and the most important component there is basically the inclusion of Taiwan into a 10th dash. Ayan, mga kabansa. And kung siya ay nagpalit ng mapa, then I was saying that we can go back to amending our baselines law 9522 to return to the Treaty of Paris limits and to put back the Kalayaan Island Group. Because marami po sa ginagawa natin ngayon dito sa South China Seas, ang wala talaga tayong panuntunan. Miski na po sabihin ng Philippine Coast Guard dyan, wala kayong tamang longitudes and latitudes dyan, and every time you go to the South China Seas, you are virtually lost at sea. Hindi nyo alam. Pati yung pinagmamalaki ninyo na posisyon ng Pilipinas sa Ayungin Shoal does not necessarily follow because it is a low tide elevation. At yung Pag-asa Island, Parola Island, ay inilabas ng mga naglimbag ng ating baselines law, no, sa labas ng teritoryo ng Pilipinas. So, marami pong dapat ayusin tayo dito sa ating poder. And pag naayos natin yon, pwede tayong sumalubong sa China equally on the issue of sovereignty to sovereignty discussion and bilateral negotiations. For the meantime, mga kabansa, dumating sa pagkakataon kung saan sa 43rd ASEAN Summit in Indonesia ay nagkaroon tayo ng isang window of opportunity, no, mga kabansa. And this is how this whole thing flows, no? Katatapos po lamang ng ASEAN Indonesia 2023 Summit. So pakinggan natin, noong September 5, ito po ang sinabi ng Indonesian President Joko Widodo na siya ngayong presiding officer ng ASEAN. Let's play this 2-minute of the statement of President Widodo.
Sri Baginda,
His
Yang Mulia
Majesty,
para pemimpin KTT Asia Timur.
Excellencies, East Asia Summit leaders,
Selamat datang di KTT Asia Timur.
welcome to the East Asia
Siang ini
Summit.
saya hanya ingin menekankan
This
satu
afternoon, I
hal,
just want to re-emphasize
bahwa kita
one
semua
point,
yang
that
duduk
we
di
are all
ruangan ini
sitting
memiliki
around this
tanggung
table
jawab yang
have an
sama-sama
equally
besar
enormous
untuk
responsibility
menciptakan perdamaian, stabilitas,
to create
dan
peace,
kemakmuran di
stability,
kawasan.
and prosperity in the region.
Kita semua memiliki tanggung jawab yang
We
sama
have a shared
untuk
responsibility
tidak menciptakan
to not
konflik baru,
create new
untuk
conflicts,
tidak
to
menciptakan
not
ketegangan
create
baru,
new
untuk
tensions,
tidak
to
menciptakan perang
not
baru,
create new wars.
dan di saat yang bersamaan
And at the same
kita
time,
juga memiliki tanggung jawab
we are also
untuk
responsible
menurunkan tensi yang panas,
to ease high tensions,
mencairkan suasana yang
to
berbeda,
soften hard
untuk
conditions,
menciptakan ruang dialog,
to create
untuk
rooms for
menjembatkan
dialogue,
perbedaan-perbedaan yang
and to
ada.
bridge existential differences.
Yang mulia, entah sudah berapa banyak
Excellencies,
kata perdamaian
hard to tell how many
dan
times
kata
the words
stabilitas
peace and
yang
stability
dikeluarkan setiap pertemuan
have
dari
been
kita.
uttered by every one of
Ini
us.
tidak lain menunjukkan bahwa
It definitely
pada dasarnya
shows
kita
that
semua
essentially we acknowledge
perdamaian, stabilitas
peace and
adalah
stability
kunci utama
are the main key
untuk mencapai kemakmuran.
to achieve prosperity.
ASEAN telah bertekad untuk menjadikan
ASEAN is
kawasan
steadfast
ini
in
sebagai
making this
epicentrum
region
of growth,
as the epicentrum
sehingga
of
ASEAN
growth.
akan terus
And
bekerja
therefore, ASEAN will
memainkan
continue
peran
to work
sebagai
to play a role
kontributor
as
perdamaian dan
contributor of
stabilitas.
peace and stability.
Dan ASEAN akan sangat
And ASEAN will really
jika
appreciate
KTT Asia
if
Timur
this
ini
East Asia
dapat
Summit
menyepakati pernyataan tingkat pemimpin
can agree on a leader statement in its
untuk terus
determination
menjadikan kawasan
to
ini
continue making
sebagai
this region
epicentrum of growth.
as the epicentrum of growth.
Disinilah masyarakat dunia akan menilai
This is where the
apakah kita
international community
pemimpin
will
yang
assess
memiliki
if
wisdom
we are leaders
untuk
with the
menjadikan
wisdom
dunia
to make the
tempat
world
yang lebih baik
a better
bagi
place
semua.
for all.
There you go. There you go. And it is really opportune that the ASEAN was held in Indonesia. Why? Because I'd like to introduce a two-country comparison between Indonesia and the Philippines. Alam po ninyo, ang population ng Indonesia is almost 280 million na. No? This is the fourth largest in the world. No? Samantalang tayo is the 13th largest in the world with about 117 million. So we are enjoying this, our two countries are enjoying the advantage of having a huge consumer base. Ayan po. Note that our population is roughly 1/3, no, of that of Indonesia. And there are between the 4th and the 13th, there are 9 countries between us. Pero pagdating po sa gross domestic product, $1 trillion na po ang gross domestic product ng Indonesia. Pero tayo, 331 billion pa lang. This is roughly 1/3 of Indonesia's output, placing Indonesia to be number 16 in the world in terms of economy, samantalang tayo ay malayo pa, no, to 24 positions after. And yet we are showing sa gross domestic product natin for the past 5 years, a growth, we are number 21st in the growth. No? Because ang growth po natin is more or less approximating 6% for the last 5 years. So we are 21st in terms of fastest growing, no? In the world, while Indonesia is 31st. And yet, no, mainly because of the big GDP of Indonesia for its 280 million people, it is 122nd in ranking, and the Philippines is 134. Now, ano po ang mga implikasyones ng mga statistics na ito? Ang mga statistics na ito. Ito po ang implikasyones. No? Indonesia na po ngayon, no? Ang number 10, mga kabansa. Indonesia is now number 10 in terms of global manufacturing output as of year 2019. There's a slight change from 2019 to 2023 because of the COVID, but I'm using the 2019 benchmark. Which means that Indonesia is now a major economic force to reckon with. Of course, we all know China is number 1, and the United States, in terms of global manufacturing output, has reduced to 16.8%. At itong iba, Japan, Germany, India, South Korea, Italy, France, and United Kingdom, lahat naman yan, more or less, on the top 10 to top 15. But the insertion of Indonesia here is remarkable because this was achieved only in so short a time. So ano ang ginawa ng Indonesia? No? I-qualify natin itong advantage ng global manufacturing output na ito, mga kabansa. Where Indonesia is number 10. 2, number 7th in gross domestic product, PPP, based on purchasing power parity. What is actually purchasing power parity? Ang purchasing power parity po could be equated, mga kabansa, with a high disposable income. After needs ng mga tao. Na matapos nila matustusan ang kanilang mga basic necessities, ay meron pang marami pa silang naiiwan sa bulsa. And therefore, it affects their quality of life, no? In terms of comfort, and convenience. Why? Because they are even able to do some savings. May natitira pa eh. Hindi yung gahol. Hindi yung sangkahid, sa tuka. And another insight into this is that therefore, in Indonesia, there is a better distribution of wealth. Now, malayo po ang number 7, 4.4 sa number 1. Nakita nyo naman, mga kabansa, ang disposable income ng China, no? At United States, ayan, no? Napakataas, no? At ang India, mahabol na rin. Pahabol na rin, pero malayo pa. But in the case of Indonesia, compared to the Philippines, lalo na tayong malayo. Lalo na tayong napakalayo. In fact, it is, let us just say na ang rupya is able to buy 4 times more than what the Philippine peso can buy, the Indonesian rupiah. So, yan po mga kabansa, no? And sabi ko nga kanina, the magic here is how fast was Indonesia able to achieve this. And we arrive at this chart where we show the GDP per capita of Indonesia from 1820, mga kabansa. Mula 1820 dito sa pinaka simula ng chart hanggang sa ngayon, no? Approximately sa ngayon. At makikita natin na halos plateau ang kanyang growth for almost 80 years. And up to the point, dito po, no? Dito kung saan nagkagulo-gulo mga ASEAN countries because dito yung nagkaroon ng, if you remember, yung 1995 to 96 currency crisis. No? Diyan po. But Indonesia is still able to continue upwards. Up to the time when China was making a decision kung sino magiging major partner niya sa ASEAN. And this is what? 2013. Okay? Tuloy-tuloy. And even farther up, dito naman sa araw na ito, which represents the Widodo coming to power. Widodo ascends to power. And so 2014 to 2023 ngayon, 9 years na ho in power si Widodo. Ano ang prospects ng Indonesia sa stage, sa world stage? Maaaring may growth kang ganyan, pero katulad ng India, no? Ang ganda ng growth din ng India, pero napakaraming tao, maraming masyadong obstacles. But in the case of Indonesia, alam nyo, itong pagtaas na ito, itong pagtaas ng, this is remarkable, no? This is remarkable in the study of world economies na tuloy-tuloy. Alright? So, what is our next impression? Will Indonesia be able to sustain this? Our next impression is really in the light of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Kanina nakita ninyo naman yung in terms of GDP, in terms of manufacturing and all that, that China is leading, no? That's hindi na yan mako-contest, no? So, all right. Makikita po ninyo rito ang Belt and Road Initiative. And right here, Jakarta is in the eastern maritime route configuration. Teka muna. Akala ko ba the Philippines is the most geographically advantageous when it comes to geopolitical and geoeconomic because it's at the center of the map. Ang problema po kasi, when this was being configured, nagpakita tayo ng tremendous hostility against China. Hindi na ako pupunta sa detalya, but this is during the time of Noynoy Aquino. And if you look at this map, mga kabansa, the Philippines has been left behind. Ang dapat ay paganon, at paganito. Di ho ba? Because tayo ang pinaka-extreme on the right. But this is not to be precisely because of the political uncertainties. And often, when I was in Washington, I was always asked by the people there, because I would, bakit? Why is the Philippines not serious? We're very good at starting things, but when it comes to sustaining things, we're very poor. I just showed you the chart of Indonesia, how consistently it went up. And here we're left behind. Now, ito ho yung flow ng grasya mula sa China being the focus of a great economy. Nandyan yung number 1, dito yung New Eurasian Land Bridge. Ayan po. From China pa ganun. The China-Mongolia-Russia Corridor, number 2. The China-Central Asia-West Asia Corridor, number 3. Ito po. China-Indochina. China-Indochina Peninsula Corridor. Ito po. We will discuss this with more detail. The Bangladesh-China. Ito. Myanmar Corridor. And the China-Pakistan Corridor, number 6. By the way, in configuring the maritime routing, alam po ninyo, napaka-importante, no? Napaka-importante ng role ng Singapore sa lahat. And the Strait of Malacca in front of it. Kasi dyan po lahat dumadaan. Dyan po lahat dumadaan. Papunta sa rest of the world. Yan po ang trade route. No? Yan po ang trade route. So, ang purpose ng China, when it developed the New Silk Road and its maritime component, is to be able to not be quartered by the Malacca Strait. Kaya po, kasi ang flow ng oil, di ba pa ganun? Dadaan lahat siya sa Malacca Strait. So ano ang ginawa ng China? No? Dito po, in fact, pwedeng hindi na dumaan ng South China Seas. Ito pong portion na ito. Bakit? Dahil nag-introduce na po sila ng tinatawag nilang Bangladesh-China-Myanmar Corridor. At ito po yun. So, pwede hindi na dumaan ng South China Sea. From Kunming. No? And nag-introduce din sila ng Pakistan Corridor. No? So, pwede rin hong, mga kabansa, pwede rin hong hindi na dumaan ng Indian Ocean. Diretso na sa Guadar. No? And, ayan yung ibang mga corridors pa. So, at ngayon, may plano pa na i-cut dito sa portion na ito. Teka, liwanagin natin mabuti. Ito po kasi ang Thailand, dito po, sa portion na ito, gagawa ng parang Suez Canal para hindi na talaga dumaan ng Strait of Malacca. Yan po ang configuration ng geopolitical rearrangements na ginagawa ng China with the resurrection of the Silk Road. Yung Silk Road po niya na very active during nagsimula yan ng mga year 300 pero nag-peak po yan noong 1400s. No? Importante po kasi itong positioning ng Jakarta dito to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Because siya po at hindi Pilipinas ang magiging transshipment point niya, no, to Oceania, Australia, and New Zealand, and to South America. We lost it. Now, how is Indonesia preparing for it? And nagsimula lang po ito with Indonesia dovetailing China before 2013. But when we don't assume na fast track po ito. Na fast track ito. So while Noynoy Aquino was playing politics with China, Indonesia was reaping all the blessings of a strategic partnership with China. Why is this important? Kasi binensyon natin kanina yung Indo-China-Myanmar corridor. Ito pong mapang ito na nasa kanan natin, no? Ito. Gagamitan ko na ng pula ngayon. Ito po. Nagpapakita dito sa mga black lines ang planong railway system coming from southern China, Kunming. Connecting to the rest of China. Connecting down to Hanoi, also connecting to the rest of China. From Hanoi, there's a line going down to Ho Chi Minh, and then it goes up to Phnom Penh, and then it goes to Bangkok, and then it also has a route coming from Kunming to Vientiane, and a route going up to Chiang Mai in Thailand, Bangkok, no? Merong Kunming to Mandalay connection going down to Yangon. This is Myanmar, Rangoon, and down to Bangkok. And from Bangkok all the way down to Singapore. Ngayon, ito po ang Indonesia. No? Ito po yung Sumatra. Ito po yung, itong island na ito po yung Sumatra. Diyan po magko-connect. And from there, it goes by another maritime connection to the 5-port system of Indonesia. Ito po yun. Connecting Sumatra with Java up to Bali, and then all the way to Sulawesi, which is Celebes, and from Sulawesi connecting northward to Sulawesi, projecting towards the Indonesian portions of Papua and New Guinea. Kunming to Singapore is envisioned to connect Indonesia's 5-port and hub maritime route projecting eastward to Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, and South America. And this is almost completed na po sa portion ng mga ports development because this started as early as 2013. 10 years in the making na po ito. And also, itong mga koneksyones sa mga railway na ito, some are being inaugurated already. In fact, those coming from Kunming all the way to Myanmar here, Rangoon, ito, is side by side with an oil and gas pipeline. Ganong ka-heavy, mga kabansa. At tuloy-tuloy. On August 20, 2023, Indonesian President Widodo attended the BRICS Summit. Ito naman yung Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa summit in Johannesburg amid the speculation that the country could join the group as its latest member. Widodo said that Indonesia represented 85% of the global population in the Global South. Ito po yung mga Global South means yung mga naiiwan, no? Mga bansang naiiwan. Which one's a win-win formula? This is the same role he assumed when Indonesia chaired the group of 20 largest economies in the world today. Dalawa pong grupo na ang naghahati sa buong mundo ngayon. Economically, ito yung group of 20, which is an expansion of the group of 7 of the US and its allies, European allies. At saka ito pong BRICS. Pero while Indonesia shared a lot of BRICS goals, for now, hindi pa siya sasali daw. It will pursue its own path, different from other major emerging economies in the world last year. As we speak, rather. The Jakarta Post said if Indonesia finds it in its national interest to jump onto the BRICS bandwagon. The BRICS actually is a presentation of a multipolar new world. Hindi na po unipolar ang mundo. The US no longer has dominance over the world as the superpower, as the only superpower. May mga regional interests na po. China is one regional power. Russia is another regional power. Brazil is emerging to be South American power. And of course, the US. In case it makes up its mind later on, it will have no trouble adjusting and making its own contribution to the cause. Ayan. And here we see Jokowi Widodo seated beside Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. So, yan po mga kabansa, no? Tuloy-tuloy ang kanyang diplomatic offensive. And so bold that last September 7, in-announce na Indonesia that it is its de-dollarization task force. Naaalis na siya sa dollar as a predominant mode of currency exchange to help promote the use of its own rupiah in bilateral transactions and diversify its risks from the greenback, which is the direction of the BRICS countries, mga kabansa. And as we see this, we see the economic boost of Indonesia, almost unstoppable. As we see here, Widodo himself taking a ride just the other day on the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway. Bullet train na po ito. And on the right is presented the 3,200 kilometer train connection envisioned for the entirety of Indonesia. So review po tayo. Ayan po ang success story ng Indonesia. Ang tanong, can we actualize Widodo's wisdom? Mara-replicate ba natin ito? Bongbong Marcos sees strong partnership with Indonesia. Balikan natin ang sinabi ni Widodo sa ASEAN.
Sri Baginda,
His
Yang mulia para
Majesty,
pemimpin KTT Asia Timur.
Excellencies, East Asia Summit leaders.
Selamat datang di KTT Asia Timur.
Welcome to the East Asia
Siang ini
Summit.
saya hanya ingin menekankan
This
satu
afternoon, I
hal,
just want to re-emphasize
bahwa kita
one
semua
point,
yang
that
duduk
we
di
are all
ruangan ini
sitting
memiliki
around this
tanggung
table
jawab yang
have an
sama-sama
equally
besar
enormous
untuk
responsibility
menciptakan perdamaian, stabilitas,
to create
dan
peace,
kemakmuran di
stability,
kawasan.
and prosperity in the region.
Kita semua memiliki tanggung jawab yang
We
sama
have a shared
untuk
responsibility
tidak menciptakan
to not
konflik baru,
create new
untuk
conflicts,
tidak
to
menciptakan
not
ketegangan
create
baru,
new
untuk
tensions,
tidak
to
menciptakan perang
not
baru,
create new wars.
dan di saat yang bersamaan
And at the same
kita
time,
juga memiliki tanggung jawab
we are also responsible
untuk menurunkan tensi yang panas,
to ease high tensions,
mencairkan suasana yang
to
beku,
soften hot
untuk
conditions,
menciptakan ruang dialog,
to create
untuk
rooms for
menjembatkan
dialogue,
perbedaan-perbedaan yang
and to
ada.
bridge existential differences.
Ayan mga kabansa. Can we actualize? Can we follow the road that Indonesia took over a quick jump? Parang Indonesia is the second record-breaking. Ang pinakamalaking record po ay yung China extricating 800 million of its own people out of 1.4 billion, no? More than half of its people, from the poverty line and raising their gross domestic product and parity na pinakita natin kanina. Na hindi na sila mahirap. That they are able to, the distribution of wealth in a capitalist setting in China. And here in Indonesia, hindi naman ito capitalistic. Pero ang sagot sa tanong na can we actualize without those wisdom, frankly po, no? I am pessimistic kasi we are busy with other things. Our priorities are skewed. We are presently, in my mind, taken hostage by our leadership, the people, over an agenda that is not directed towards the national interest, but through the interests of some persons representing the leadership and some countries that are foreign to the Filipino. And that's why grabe pong oras ang nauubo sa atin pagdating dito sa South China Seas. Na sinabi ko kanina, wala namang patutunguhan, kundi pataasan ng ihi, patigasan ng ulo, legalismo, lawfare, propaganda, patintero. Aba, pagka po patintero, baka yan ay mauwi sa tumbang preso. Ha? Ha? Hindi na po yata nakakatawa yan, mga kabansa. Hindi na po yata nakakatawa yan. Especially when China changed its map. Yung po nakikita nyo dyan na dragon is actually the 10th dash line. Mga kabansa. At yan, in no uncertain terms, ay isinama na ng China dahil sa pakikialam ng Estados Unidos represented by that Aguila. So, saan ba tayo talaga papunta? Ha? Tayo ba'y sasaw-saw dito sa kaguluhan na maaaring ang Taiwan ay kunin ng China? Yan naman ay talagang kanya. Ibinalik ko ng Cairo Conference, ng Potsdam Conference, ng Treaty of San Francisco, Treaty of Taipei, ang Taiwan. Formosa ang tawag dyan. Balikan nyo sa history. sa China at lahat ng mga ninakaw ng Japan sa China. Pero, wala nang ginawa itong agila na ito kundi manggulo, mga kabansa. At gamitin ang UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Seas. Hindi naman siya membro dyan. Ginagamit niyang panuntunan niya na so-called siya lang gumagamit ng rules-based order. Na kinokopya naman ng mga lideres na namumuno ngayon sa Pilipinas. Ano ba talaga ang direksyon natin? Ito ba? Ito ba susunod? PH, US, top brass, eye, more EDCA sites? Ayan mga kabansa? Are we in dalliance with the Americans? And are we giving the right signal? Tingnan niyo ito si Browner. Kasama dito ito si Admiral John Aquilino. At si Ambassador Carlson. Yan na ba ang mga nagpapatakbo ng pulisiya ng Pilipinas ngayon? Pakinggan natin itong YouTube coverage.
Philippine and U.S. defense officials meeting for more than 3 hours in Camp Aguinaldo. The Mutual Defense Board Security Engagement Board meeting, an annual gathering to coordinate efforts boosting their defense and security cooperation.
We have dedicated ourselves to addressing the dynamic and evolving challenges that confront our nation's security.
The security environment is extremely challenging right now, and I want to thank my friend and partner, General Bronner, for his leadership.
The meeting also aims to finalize the cycle of projects to be carried out in 2024, including joint exercises such as the Balikatan. On Wednesday, officials were in Cagayan and Pampanga to inspect EDCA sites or Philippine military camps where U.S. troops are given wider access.
All of the EDCA sites are sovereign Philippine territory.
Aside from the possibility of adding more locations, there will also be an increase in the U.S.-funded projects for the new EDCA sites.
And the United States has identified investment of almost $110 million to those sites.
I would like to say that the Philippine government is also spending for these EDCA sites, primarily because these are our own camps.
And while they chose to visit EDCA sites in northern Luzon, officials say this should not be seen as prepping for potential conflict over Taiwan or the Korean Peninsula.
All of this joint operations, even the selection of our EDCA sites, has nothing to do with the other countries in the Indo-Pacific region.
So the viability of those sites for assistance, for training, and for interoperability is really the key. But let there be no doubt, those are sovereign Philippine locations.
There are calls to expand U.S. presence in the West Philippine Sea, including at Pagasa Island and Ayungin Shoal.
On joint patrols, joint drills, what about a joint forward base? Is that, can we do that?
All I know is about the EDCA site in Balabac. The forward base in KIG is something that hindi pa namin napag-uusapan. I'm not aware of any effort to establish a forward base in KIG. But
KIG, Kalayaan
Island Group.
But the U.S. has been visible in the West Philippine Sea. Aside from the sightings of its spy plane, Philippine and U.S. navies recently holding joint patrols in Palawan.
We'll continue to do that for the long term, ultimately to ensure that we can maintain the freedom of the seas, freedom of airspace, so that all the nations in the region can enjoy peace and prosperity.
Strengthening their alliance in the face of growing threats confronting the two allies. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
O yan. Balita. No? Yung mga sitwasyon na ganyan, no? Banggit ng mga sovereignty issues and all that stuff. Pagka po ang isang Philippine base, tinake over na ng EDCA, hindi na po yan. Huwag nyo na kaming pagbubulahin na para sa humanitarian assistance and disaster response yan. Nagkaroon na tayo ng debate dyan. Kumambyo kayo, naging deterrence. O deterrence against what? Sino ba ang ating kaaway? Wala naman tayo kaaway. And then finally, nagkabistuhan dahil sa mga presence ng American assets dyan. Na ito pala ay prepositioning at bentahan ng armas. Kaya tuloy, dito, papakita ko sa inyo, dito sa War on the Rocks. Mga kabasa, War on the Rocks. Ito si Blake Hersinger, isang fellow sa University of Sydney, Australia. Pero US Studies Center yan, no? Is already talking about building combined forward operating base doon sa Sierra Madre. Na hindi naman tayo pwede mag-exercise ng sovereignty. So, nagkakaroon na ng mga wild speculations, mga kabansa. Ayan ang link. Balikan ninyo. Ayan, nasa ilalim ang link for the full article. But, there is a deliberate misreading of history here. Because sinasabi nga, China may feel emboldened, sabi ni Hersinger, to interfere with the ship to stake its own claim to the territory. Ano sinasabi niyang interfere? China is claiming that to be its domestic sea. How can it be interfering in its own domestic sea? By virtue of historic rights. Ang hirap sa inyo, nakakita lang kayo ng angkla sa UNCLOS, ginagasgas nyo na ng ginagasgas, which raises the prospect of a U.S.-Chinese conflict over the outpost. Ang layo na kagad ng projection. The United States and the Philippines should act before being forced to react to deteriorating conditions aboard the ship. There is nothing really you cannot do there. That you can do there and cannot do there. Because that is a low tide elevation. It cannot be subject of sovereignty. And when that boat deteriorates, that boat is the only claim to sovereignty because it's a naval commission boat. It's an asset which may or may not be covered, but I would like to think may be covered by the Mutual Defense Treaty. Failure to do so would not only create conditions for the loss of Philippine sovereignty. Wow! Anong mawawala dyan? Eh Ayungin Shoal is not a subject nga for sovereignty claim. And reading it on the wrong side of history, a reenactment of China's seizure of the Philippines Scarborough Shoal in 2012. There was no China seizure. We withdraw our ships from the standoff on orders of our Secretary of Foreign Affairs with the approval of President Aquino. Aquino deliberately lost that territory. Huwag na tayo magbulahan dito. But could also potentially create a crisis within the bilateral U.S.-Philippine alliance because you are attacking from a destructive point of view. Ano bang magagana natin dyan? Por Diyos y por Santo, mga kabansa. Ano yung sinabi ni Aquilino? Sorry. 100 million sa 6 years ni Duterte. Magkano? 25 billion. Maybe more. Because hindi ma-account properly yung private investments in 20 because hindi naman dumaan ng central bank. Pero tuloy-tuloy, taas ng mga kondominyo, tuloy-tuloy ang mga projects. Saan nagagaling ang pera dyan? China lang ang may pera. Ay, nako. subtle insertion of U.S. interests. The Philippines should remove the Sierra Madre and replace it with the permanent structures. Once you remove the Sierra Madre, there is no longer any claim, any possible claim to sovereignty. Kaya hindi yan pinakialaman. Hindi pwede mag-apply ang UNCLOS dyan because the presence of Sierra Madre there militarizes the issue. And replace it with the permanent structures kung kaya nyo. But doing that, you are provoking China. Man, by combined rotational forces of both the Philippines and the U.S. Marine Corps, in-extend nyo na. Hindi Philippine territory yan. Gusto nyo tayuan ang EDCA and man it with U.S. Marine Corps. Such a forward operating base would be a powerful signal of commitment to the alliance of both nations, as well as providing significant improvements in the situational awareness for both the United States and the Philippines. Are you saying that what is good for the United States is automatically good for us? Baka nakalimutan nyo na ang dark side of history natin with the U.S. By raising potential cost of interference, a combined outpost might deter future efforts from Beijing aimed at interdicting resupply. The resupply of this area is not an issue. It has been going on for the past 24 years until the Philippine Coast Guard and the Philippine military, in its ambition to gain more funds and more action para magkaroon kayo ng mga brownie points, mag-increase yung mga chevron nyo dito sa bawat side ng damit ninyo. Dahil kung walang aksyon, wala kayong promotion. For the meantime, what happens to the rest of the country? Hindi nyo ba nahalata that you are bringing it closer and closer to a Cold War confrontation between the United States and China, which has already caused the war in Ukraine? At ngayon, dadalhin nyo dito sa Asian centrality and non-alignment, oblivious of the fact that we have a treaty of neutrality and non-nuclear proliferation. Gusto nyo ba? Dyan lang papunta yan. Dyan lang naman tayo dadalhin na Amerika sa ampa. So I think we are far from Widodo's wisdom. And in fact, we are going on an opposite direction. Tumalikod nga si Marcos sa atin. Replay natin para hindi tayo mawala ng perspective. Kung saan dapat tayo nagbibigay ng importansya. Dito po sa sinabi ni Widodo. Ulitin natin ang sinabi ni Widodo.
Sri Baginda,
His Majesty,
pemimpin KTT Asia Timur.
Excellencies, East Asia Summit leaders.
Selamat datang di KTT Asia Timur.
Welcome to the East Asia
Siang ini
Summit.
saya hanya ingin menekankan
This
satu
afternoon, I
hal,
just want to re-emphasize
bahwa kita
one
semua
point, that
yang duduk
we
di
are
ruangan
all
ini
sitting
memiliki
around
tanggung
this table
jawab yang
have an
sama-sama
equally
besar
enormous
untuk
responsibility
menciptakan perdamaian, stabilitas,
to create
dan
peace,
kemakmuran
stability,
kawasan.
and prosperity in the region.
Kita semua memiliki tanggung jawab yang
We
sama
have a shared
untuk
responsibility
tidak menciptakan
to not
konflik baru,
create new
untuk
conflicts,
tidak
to
menciptakan
not
ketegangan
create
baru,
new
untuk
tensions,
tidak
to
menciptakan perang
not
baru,
create new wars.
dan di saat yang bersamaan
And at the same
kita
time,
juga memiliki tanggung jawab
we are also responsible
untuk menurunkan tensi yang panas,
to ease high tensions,
mencairkan suasana yang
to
kondusif,
soften hot
untuk
conditions,
menciptakan ruang dialog,
to create
untuk
rooms for
menjembatkan
dialogue,
perbedaan-perbedaan yang
and to
ada.
bridge existential differences.
Ngayon, tumalikod na sa atin. Sa lahat ng sinabi ni Widodo, patama yan dito kay Bongbong Marcos. Ayan, tayo ba'y nabubudol-budol na naman? Dahil ang patutunguhan lang yan ay gera. And we say no to war. No to EDCA. I-connect nyo sa akin kung ano ang patutunguhan ng mga kaguluhan ngayon sa South China Sea at EDCA papunta sa gera. Diretso. Pero mag-mention kayo sa akin ng anything, any connection whatsoever to 60 per kilo na bigas. Anong connection yan dyan? Anong connection yan sa 300 peso per kilo na kamatis? Sa presyo ng sibuyas? Sa presyo ng asukal? Sa kinikita ng mga taong bayan na dapat kitain at mga jobs na dapat i-create ng administrasyon na ito na hindi nagaganap at sa kaguluhang nangyayari lalo-lalo na sa Department of Agriculture. Diyan kayo papunta sa gera, and so we say no! No to war! Ha? At mag-ingat tayo. No to EDCA. At kung hindi pa sapat sa inyo yan, iiwanan ko sa inyo ngayong araw na ito ang wisdom ng isang American President. Walang iba kundi si John F. Kennedy. Those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. Maraming salamat. Yan po, presentasyon ko ngayon. Pupunta ngayon tayo sa mga nagkomento sa social media. Tingnan natin, si Carlos Joe Marlim, Katipunan Demokratikong Mabuhay. San Lorenzo Ruiz, Sacramento TV, President Widodo awarded 80 billion projects to China instead of Japan, India. BRI, 90 countries today already signed up to register to attend the Belt Road Initiative. China have a stranded military ship besides a high-tech, newly painted Sierra Madre, face green, smiling face green, smiling face green, SM sailing. So, guys counter, bullet train po sila sa Indonesia o maglev train na rin. Hindi, bullet train pa lamang. Ang maglev ay sa China. Sikat po kasi China ngayon sa maglev trains. Alright, Argelio Sorcelito, si Tariela ang unang-unang amboys. Meron po tayong scoop dyan, bine-verify pa lang natin. No? Roger Balita, wala na, napag-iwanan na tayo ng Indonesia. Paano nila another Ukraine in the making? Evelyn Sapalicio Cruz, Widodo compared to BBM, Kaado, laging sober si Widodo, mas adult at mas sariling pag-iisip. Marami pa pong nagkukomento pero wala na tayong oras. At magpapaalam na ako sa inyo. Pero bago yan, alalahanin po ninyo, kung kayo ay interesado sa any of my books, kung gusto niyo ng dalawa, I can make a bundle for you. Kung gusto niyo ng tatlo, I can package one for you. Just zero in on the number 0917-336-4366. And remember, just as we said today, we are at war with nobody else but with ourselves. Magandang hapon, magandang gabi, magandang umaga, saan man parte ng mundo kayo naroroon. Ito na po ang Maestro, nagpapaalam at magkita-kita tayong muli sa darating na Sabado. Maraming salamat po.
Get ready. Get ready.